It's time for another Dice Tower review with Beth Heile.
Hi, my name is Beth Heile here at Cat and Mouse Game Store in Chicago, Illinois to do a rules overview of Last Will, published here in the United States by Rio Grande Games. Now, Last Will is definitely a backwards thinking kind of game. You're trying to lose all your money in this game, which makes for some really interesting strategic decisions, and you end up feeling like you're thinking sideways. But because of that, it ends up being very addictive. And the first thing I did after I lost in my first game was promptly ask, can we play again? So why don't we take a look at maybe what makes Last Will so intriguing. In Last Will, players are trying to impress their uncle and prove to him that they know how to live an extravagant lifestyle. Now, what does that really mean? It means that the player who can lose all their money the fastest is going to be the winner. So this is definitely a backwards thinking game. Now, if you want an easy game, the rules recommend starting with $70, since that's going to be pretty easy to lose, and it's to start a smalling amount. But if you want more of a challenge, you can use one of these cards to determine the starting money for all the players. So in this one, I've picked the next smallest amount, $80, and that's going to be my starting money in this example. Now, I'm not going to go extensively through setup, but I will tell you what a player will get aside from their starting money. They will also get 6 cards, 3 with this dapper gentleman pictured on the front, and 3 with this property. They will also get 2 top hats and a circle in their player color. And then you're going to go and set up the middle of the board, which you can just refer to the rules on how to do that. There are 7 rounds in Last Will, and that 7th round is really just an extension. If no one's won by the end of the 6th round, then you would go on for a final 7th round. Someone wins in round 6, though, you're just going to end the game. This game is going to go much faster than you think it is. The start of a round requires players to place their pawn up here along this hourglass track. The first person to do this has this starting player token, so let's say that's me. By placing my token here, 4 things are going to happen. First, it's going to help me determine turn order for the rest of this round. Second, it's going to determine how many cards I get to draw right now as soon as I place my pawn. Third, it determines how many of my top hat helpers I will get to place next once everyone has drawn their cards. And fourth, it tells me how many actions I get to spend at the end of this round. So in placing my pawn here, I'm going to immediately draw 3 cards. I can draw from any of these 4 piles, but never from the crown pile. And it's okay to mix and match different piles. I just can't peek at the cards in between drawing. I have to just grab whatever I see off the top of the pile, and that's what I get. Now, going around the table, other players will place their pawns and draw their cards. And this determines our turn order for the rest of the round, starting with yellow, then me, then blue, and finally red. The second part of a round is placing our top hat helpers, which are these great little wooden top hat figures. Now, yellow is going to be the start player, and they are going to place one of their top hats somewhere on the board, so maybe they will go there and grab a card. Then it's going to be my turn to place 1, and maybe I will do that, and I will immediately resolve that action, and then finally blue and red. Now, yellow only gets to place 1 top hat because they chose an hourglass location that only has 1 helper available. So their placement is done, but myself, blue, and red all have 2 top hats pictured, so we're going to then go in turn order and place our second hat. And likewise for blue and red. Now, reviewing the different locations around the board and what they do. If you come here, this is the opera, and that will allow you to get rid of 2 money, and that is the whole point of this game, is to get rid of money. So it's just a nice surefire way to get rid of a little cash. If you come here, that allows you to buy an extension, because you only have a limited number of spots to build cards in your tableau, and this gives you 1 extra spot. So that would be that location. There is one spot for each player to draw an additional card off of those same 4 piles we were drawing from before. Coming here allows you to change the value of properties. Now, we haven't looked at property cards yet, but generally you're going to want to sell them for the worst possible value ever because you do not want to make money. You want to lose it. So messing with these values hopefully allows you to get the worst possible price for the type of location that you own. And finally, going anywhere on this right half of the board allows you just to claim the card that's pictured right next to the top hat, and that just goes immediately into your hand. Before we talk about spending actions, we're going to look at some of the cards just to get an example of the symbols that you're going to see. Now, we already know that there's basically 4 major piles of cards, but there's 2 colors to look out for. Those that have dark colored borders and those that do not. Now, these light colored borders, some are blue, some are white, these are temporary cards. As soon as you spend them, they're going to be discarded. They're going to be temporary events or things you'll use to augment these dark bordered brown cards, which are permanent. These brown ones you will build into your tableau, and they will stay there just about until the end of the game or until you sell them. Now, for any of these cards, if there's information printed here along the left-hand side, that happens when the card is either spent, as in one of those light bordered cards, or in the case of these permanent cards, when it is built. If you see something printed over here in the right-hand side, that is a power that this card has, and it usually takes an action to activate that power. Anytime you see this red A in a box, it means it takes an action to do that thing. Now, the first major type of cards is property. And these I'm going to explain specifically because they are both some of the most powerful cards of the game and some of the riskiest. When you build these cards, you're going to put a little house on the top of this track, and you're going to spend that money immediately. And spending money is good because you're buying this property. So I'm going to spend $15 million to buy this mansion and $23 million to buy this manor house. Great, I've just dumped a whole lot of money. Now, after I've built this card, I have a choice. I can either spend an action to activate the power. In the case of the mansion here, I get to lose 3 money. Great. Or in the manor house, I would lose 5. If I don't do anything with property, then the value will depreciate 1 step down this track because my mansion is going to fall into disrepair since nobody is using it. If I activate this power on the right-hand side, however, the value will stay the same. And the value can never go back up. It's only ever going to go down, which is good because we want to sell it for the worst price possible because we do not want to make money in this game. The second kind of card are helpers, and they have a little gentleman pictured on the back. You again are going to build these into your tableau because they have a dark border. Now, just to give you 2 examples, the coachman here, you'll notice you will need to build him initially, but it does not take an action to activate this card. You do not see that red A anywhere on this card. So you would just follow the rule along the bottom here whenever it applies, which is getting to spend an extra money whenever you do anything with a coach picture on it. Now, the Gentleman's Club here, you'll notice, has a plus A on the left side. So that means that activates when you are building it. So it costs an extra action to build this card. But for 1 action thereafter, you can easily dump 5 money each time you spend an action here. And each card can only be activated once per round. The other 2 types of cards are both temporary. We have events and companions. There are only 4 types of companion cards: chefs, horses, lady guests, and dogs. And all of these are going to be used to augment the value of other cards, some temporary and some not. If you're going to augment a permanent card, let's say this card asks if I can get a chef and a lady guest to come stay at my manor house, so I could spend my lady guest and place a matching pink chip on that card, and now I permanently have a lady guest who's staying at my manor house. Or a companion can augment a temporary card, such as this dinner here. when I spend this card, and again, this is only once and then I toss the card away, it costs 1 action to spend 2 money. But if I have a dog in my hand, I get to spend an extra 2 money because my dog will eat some food too. So it's a great way to shed cash fast. Now, here's an example of just a solo event card. I can spend 1 action to lose 3 money. And remember, there may be some effects from some of your gentleman cards, your helpers, or your property cards that may augment the value of these temporary events and allow you to ditch money that much faster. So now we're ready to spend our actions. The amount of actions that I get is printed here at the bottom of my hourglass. It says 2A, so I'm going to get 2 actions. Now, if I'd purchased a Tableau extension by using one of my top helpers, this would be a good time just to add that onto my field here, giving me 1 more space to build a permanent dark colored card. Now, we've already talked about those permanent cards, but you'll notice there are red A's pictured on my tableau here, which means it takes an action to build a card. So of my 2 cards that I have available, I might decide to build a mansion. I get to spend 15 money in doing so. And then perhaps I'd like to activate it, and I would slide it down so I can see the check mark, which is just an indication to me that each card can only be activated once. So if I bumped it down to that check mark level, I know I cannot use that card again this round. And they'll just bump back up at the end of a round. Now, there are cards that will allow you to acquire more actions, allowing you to chain and be able to do a longer sequence than just the 2 actions I just took. But that's a big part of the strategy of the game, is trying to decide what actions are most important in this round. Now, once all the players have taken all of their actions, there's a tiny bit of cleanup. Hopefully you've lost some money since the round began. You're going to retrieve your tokens and your top hat helpers. You're going to reset any cards back up on your tableau. And here's the kicker. You have to discard down to 2 cards in your hand, unless you have a card that allows you to do otherwise, which can be really painful. Now, if any of your cards were not activated in this round, make sure you depreciate their value. And finally, whoever was the first turn player is going to pass this wooden column over to the next player, and they will begin the next round by placing their token on a new hourglass spot. Now, there's one final element to take into consideration as you near the end of the game. Let's say we're in round 5 of 6, and remember, we only go on to the 7th round if we need to. If a person has any property left, they are barred from winning the game. Property has value, and thus you can't have lost all your money if you still have property. So you're going to have to sell it. Selling one property takes 1 action. And the price that you get is wherever this little house chip is, and that depends on how many times you've activated this card. I've neglected this property twice, so its values dropped from the 15 that I spent down to just 11. Now, as you sell, you also are going to take into effect this chart. My property has a yellow icon. I will look at the matching yellow icon, and unfortunately, I'm going to add +1. So instead of getting 11 money back, I'm going to get 12 money back. So you cannot win the game if you have any property, which is part of the danger of building property in Last Will. Well, I hope you had a good time losing all of your money. Whoever has lost all their money by round 6 is going to be the winner, as long as they're not owning any property. And if nobody's done that, then you will continue through to round 7. If still nobody has lost all their money at that point, then whoever has the least amount and no property is going to be the winner. Now, I thought Last Will was very addicting when I played it, but I did have one big suggestion. The symbols can be a little hard to figure out in your first game, so we found it was a huge benefit to make photocopies of the last page of the rulebook, which has a breakdown of all the symbols on all the cards. That way each player could have their own copy of this sheet and not have to keep passing the rules around every couple of seconds. This made for a much quicker game when we tried this out for the first time. Now, if you're looking for other games that have a unique little twist to them, then I have 2 ideas. The first is Pergamon. Pergamon shares a very similar selection mechanic with Last Will. And that selection determines all the goodies that you get for the rest of that round, turn order, and how much money you get as well. So both of those elements felt very similar between Last Will and Pergamon. Second, you might want to check out Furstenfeld. Furstenfeld was also sort of a backwards, sideways thinking game, because you are developing fields to sell the goods that you need to make beer, but really your end goal is to build a castle, and you're going to have to completely ditch all of your fields you've worked so hard to build your castle instead, and you have to do that to win. So it ends up feeling very sideways as you're playing it, as I also found in Last Will. Now, all of these are available at Cat and Mouse, and all of these now have a tutorial video associated with them, so you can either watch me to learn how to play most of the game, or come into Cat and Mouse and we'll show it to you in person.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.